Welcome to another Town Hall session with the Global Shapers community. We are live from the World Economic Forum's new COVID Action Platform studio, and today we welcome over 200 Global Shapers and counting to another virtual session. Today, if you are new to our Town Hall sessions, a few ground rules as we get started. First and foremost, we are joined by members of the Global Shapers team. You can see them on the screen. They will be answering your questions, comments in the chat. So if you're new, introduce yourself in the chat function. Here you can introduce what you're working on, ideas to contribute to the conversation, and much more. We also today will be using the Q&A function. If you have a question for today's moderator or our special guest who you can see on the call today, please use the Q&A function as well. More from our special guest in just a few moments, but first, let's hear from the head of the Global Shapers community, Wadia, about the latest activities we're seeing across the Global Shapers community this month.
Good morning, good afternoon, good evening to all the Global Shapers who are joining us. The numbers are going so quickly and we are so glad to have you with us. Thanks for joining us in this Global Shapers community monthly town hall, where we would like to be close to you and shed the light to all the actions that you are driving locally and also across the world. A few updates from our side as a team. As you may have seen in the April newsletter, we launched so many initiatives, and the Shapers have been driving the action on the local level in really showing and believing in the spirit of the multi-stakeholder, in bringing all the stakeholders together so that there is a positive impact at the local level. To help you with that, we launched also an initiative which you've seen, and where we onboarded more than 500 Shapers, and this one is Uplink. Uplink is a new initiative of the forum in order to help us connect the projects to different stakeholders in a way to accelerate that impact. The Shapers that are being invited in this first phase are all related to the oceans thematic or sustainability in general, and they've been already doing an amazing work in coming up with solutions and representing the Global Shapers community. You've seen also that in the next few days, weeks, we will be launching the new academy in partnership with Accenture, the partner of the Global Shapers community, and this academy will help us have the Shapers in capacity modules, capacity building modules, come up with innovative ideas, but also learn how to be a responsible leader, how to manage a community, how to be a leader in terms of ambiguity in such the one we are living in as we speak. We also continue to open new hubs, and we are receiving great applications. Today we are at more than 420 hubs globally, with some really great additions that we are working on, like Yellowknife in Canada, which is very up north, and I think it's going to be our most northern hub in the world. It is also important to remind you of the announcement that we made in the last few weeks about the postponement of the Future of Leadership Summit due to the pandemic, but also to the opportunity in bringing new meetings that will be very helpful for our community, but also for you. The new addition will be a virtual annual curators meeting, and this one will be in the beginning of July, when the curators will start their mandate, so that we can equip them with the right tools to have healthy hubs and drive the action at the local level. And then in August, we will have a virtual Global Shapers Summit, where we will be inviting more than 1,000 Shapers to come, be inspired, and drive actions, especially in the 3 impact areas that are dear to our community. So those are the main updates for the last 2 weeks since our Global Shapers newsletter.
Thank you, Wadia. That is a lot of updates. New virtual sessions, new hubs, new knowledge platforms, and many new activities across the community at large. This is thanks to the incredibly hard work of global shapers around the world, and to some of our wonderful partners. So this is great to see. It's also important to mention that around the world, we see hubs continuing to take action at the local level, implementing projects despite this period of physical distancing. And this is one of the most inspiring things we see in the community to date. We see over 150 hubs, if not more to date, who are implementing projects specifically to support their communities on COVID-19. We see hubs taking action to strengthen health systems, to protect livelihoods, especially of the most vulnerable groups in their communities, and as well to build more inclusive responses at the local level. Today, we are joined by Global Shaper David Walcott from the Kingston Hub, and David is supporting us by leading the new COVID Action Steering Committee. David, let's turn it over to you. What do you see hubs doing at the local level to help support and combat this virus?
So thank you, Natalie. And of course, greetings to Wadia, the entire Shapers Collective, and of course, Professor Schwab. The response has really been outstanding. We've seen hubs really sort of join together in a very sort of multi-stakeholder fashion and seek to drive changes along each of the pillars that the Global Shapers community was really designed to serve. So we've been driving dialogue, we've been driving action, we've been driving change. And to give you a few concrete examples, as you had mentioned, there have been over 150 projects by now. Hubs have been doing, really impactful things in the most remote of places. For example, the Partner Hub in India has created a database to translate, WHO certified information into vernacular Indian languages. The Vientiane Hub has been fundraising for PPE in Laos, and of course the Milan Hub outstandingly has launched an intensive care pods project to amplify ICU capacity for patients with severe symptoms, which really stands out because it's exceptional. I mean, large institutions haven't been able to take on such ambitious projects. And so it really shows the global impact of the collective Shaper community.
Thank you very much, David, for that update. Yes, he's absolutely right. We see actions in many cities, in many countries around the world being led by our members, and we are so appreciative of this work. Wadia, I'm not sure if you see this, but we have surpassed over 400 participants on this call, and we thank all of those who've dialed in and who are taking action on COVID at the local level. We will continue to provide updates to all community members on our actions, specifically on TopLink and also our global response feed. And the Global Shapers team will link to both of those platforms in the chat function. And thank you to everyone who's using the chat to share your ideas and actions with us. It's also important to remember, Wadia, Global Shapers are not only taking action on COVID-19, but also many other timeless issues that are important to young people around the world. This past Wednesday was Earth Day, and we saw Global Shapers around the world mobilize specifically to fight for the planet and protect nature. We have Robin Seatle joining us from the Calgary Hub, and Robin actually leads our Climate Action and Environment Steering Committee. Robin, how did Global Shapers mobilize for Earth Day, and what would you like to share with the 400 and now 50 participants who are on the line?
Thanks so much, Natalie. So I think one of the interesting memes that I read on Earth Day, among many, was that it's not just a day, but it's a movement. And I think that the Global Shaper community is really in the thick of that movement. So as you mentioned, Natalie, we ran a video campaign on Earth Day to share some of our awesome project work around the globe, but also to share our voice and raise our voices through the Voice for the Planet campaign, which was the campaign that the Global Shapers co-launched in Davos in 2019. But as you mentioned, Natalie, there are a number of projects that are continuing to progress even in spite of the physical distancing that we're having to participate in, including 5 projects that were actually funded by our awesome champion, Rod Zander, and through the Climate Reality Project, which have been allowing hubs in Nigeria, Belgium, Australia, and Ecuador, as well as in Romania, to continue some of their fantastic project work around implementing photovoltaic cells, educating folks on organic waste, and also empowering young people to take climate action and also get involved in politics, as well as planting trees and promoting cycling. So those are just a few of the examples of the projects that continue to take place. Even though, again, some of the physical implementation components of those projects aren't possible right now, there's a lot of legwork being done around education, as well as, you know, getting the proper permitting done so that when we are able to reconvene physically, that these projects can take off. Another thing I just wanted to highlight as well is just the importance of using this time to educate ourselves. I think this is a great opportunity for us to learn more about climate change and the impacts that it has on our regions, as well as then start planning. How do we then protect the most vulnerable communities in our own regions around climate change or against climate change? The steering committee itself will actually be hosting a number of webinars with leaders in this space to help us discuss, okay, what do we do post-COVID as well? How do we reimagine a world where we're putting people, planet at the forefront of our systems, our stimulus packages that the governments are developing? How do we kind of get behind this movement? So education, I think, as well as reaching out to local governments, is a great thing and a great opportunity at this time. Yeah, so, and I just did also want to mention that there's a few shapers. I think a lot of shapers are getting involved in this. How do we redefine society post-COVID? There's a few shapers from the Austin Hub and the Vancouver Hub that are actually hosting a series of facilitated workshops over this weekend to help the community convene over this topic and understand how can we better mobilize under our 3 impact areas to better define a post-COVID world where we're united and we're able to unite across the community. Even though we're not able to be physically together, we can still kind of convene our energies and our voices online to help further not only the climate fight, but also our other 3 impact areas.
Thanks a lot, Robin. That's very helpful, and it's very reassuring and humbling to know that as a community, we didn't forget also the other priorities. Even in this time of pandemics, climate change as a topic is very important for the shapers, as well as education and the future of employment, which are the kind of the work that the shapers have been driving in the last months and years at the local level. Without further ado, in the last Global Shapers Community Town Hall, a lot of you asked how is Professor Schwab and what advice he has for young people and especially for the shapers. So Professor Schwab, even with his busy schedule, is taking time to join us. Please welcome Professor Schwab for some remarks, and then we will open it for some Q&A. Professor Schwab?
But yeah, I was looking very much forward to this opportunity to meet, at least virtually, the Global Shapers, because I'm so proud. I always have been proud of what the Global Shapers are doing, but listening to the reports of David and Robin, I think I couldn't have imagined when I created this community many years ago what impact we really have. Let me make first some remarks related to COVID. I'm very much engaged, close to the WHO, close to a number of initiatives. And you know, the forum has its own platform where we exchange on the top level information, but where we also try to mobilize the support of the know-how and the resources of the business community to fight the virus. At the moment, if I would make an analysis of where we stand, I would say this virus will be around with us for at least 18 months. It will not suddenly disappear. It doesn't become, let's say, we will not have a less infectious world. We can only make it a less infectious world in three ways. First, is that we find a vaccine, and here the forum is also engaged. Second, I think also people speak about vaccines, but we should also talk about treatments. For example, Bill Gates, our friend, he believes much more in the likelihood of an appropriate treatment coming fast compared to the vaccines. Not, let's say, to forget that for HIV, for example, we do not have, even after so many years, we do not have a vaccine yet. And the third one is, of course, social distancing, tracking, and I think here the global shapers have to play a major role. They can get involved in many practical ways to alleviate the situation. But I think the major role also of global shapers should be to be ambassadors for this notion of social distancing. My feel is that when we see a, let's say, removal of the most serious lockdown regulations, people will just feel, the crisis is over and everything is like it has been, and our normal behavior will come back. And that will be very dangerous as long as we do not have a vaccine or a treatment. So to see our global shapers hubs to be the ambassadors and to continue to be the ambassadors for social distancing, because it's your life, it's your future life, I think is essential. Let me stop here, Vadia and Natalie, and just to see whether there are questions related to COVID-19. And then I have a second big project or idea where I want really the global shapers to play a major role.
Thank you, Professor. And we have a question from Sanvar, and he's saying, how does COVID-19 impact the fourth industrial revolution? Does it delays it, advance it, change it in some ways?
So two aspects. The first one is we have to create the ethical principles. We have to create, for example, the application rules for artificial intelligence, for face recognition, and all those questions which are still, to a certain extent, open or not yet resolved. What is happening now with the COVID crisis, of course, the attention is given to the virus, but technology is continuing, is developing, and so we have to be careful that we do not create a situation where the technology is just galloping ahead without looking at the human implications. Now, on the more positive side, I think the fourth industrial revolution provides us. I mean, I'm not speaking just of, let's say, artificial intelligence, of tracking capabilities, and so on. It provides us actually with some very important tools to fight the virus. And we speak at the moment, if I take another area, which is of, if I look at the future, I see three major technologies which will tremendously change us, I would say, us, economies and societies. The first one is quantum computing, which will become applicable in the next 10 years. The second one is space technology. But the third one, of which I want to speak particularly, is synthetic biology. And there is a hope, we are still far away, that synthetic biology, for example, could, if we do not find a vaccine or in the traditional ways, that synthetic biology could bring us a vaccine faster than the traditional methods. Let me just explain the traditional methods to be understood. The traditional methods are based that you have to create antibodies, and that's from a biotechnological point of view a relatively difficult undertaking. With synthetic biology, you can implant into the body the genetic information to build your own antigenes. It's a little bit more complicated, but I just wanted to show the differentiation.
Thank you, Professor. And another question from Thomas, and he's asking, what do you see as the best practice to embed post-COVID-19 plans in existing national and international SDG action plans, especially that the COP26 have been postponed? So what are kind of the best practices that you've seen that we can embed in post-COVID-19 plans?
If you look at it from a national point of view, the final judgment is not yet out. We do not know whether the Swedish example, which is quite different because it's very relaxed, whether the Swedish example is the best one. People start to doubt, even Swedish politicians, because there's now the question, shouldn't we introduce at least an assembly interdiction? Shouldn't we, let's say, close restaurants and so on, which have been open until now? And on the other hand, I think there is if I take Europe, there is the Austrian example, were a little bit late because they had quite some issues in the ski resorts, but very tough measurements were taken. And now Austria is probably the country coming back to normal life fastest. What the best recipe is, we do not know. And we see now, let's say, we have quite some friends from South Africa in this community meeting. South Africa has acted also very in a quite tough manner. Now relaxing to a certain extent. We will have to see how it evolves. If you talk to politicians, the key is to keep the balance between new infections, and we will see new infections, they will not disappear, and the capability of the health system to take care of those who are infected.
Thank you, Professor. Nikta is also with us on the line, and she has a question related to COVID-19. Nikta? Nikta, can you hear us?
Yes.
Go ahead.
You have to unmute.
Oh, there you go. Can you guys hear me now?
Yes, go ahead, Nikta.
Sorry about that. Thank you for being here with us today, Professor Schwab. The question I wanted to ask you was, what advice would you give to those communities who cannot practice social distancing? We know about a lot of vulnerable communities that are being affected by this, for example, refugee camps. And for reference, I think this week, Lebanon had a Syrian refugee camp that just confirmed the first case, and they're trying to figure out what to do with the lack of resources and the fact that their community is already extremely, extremely close to each other.
I know, Nikta, and I think I'm proud how many of our hubs and so on are involved to confront this challenge. I think I know it's maybe very theoretical, but if you can to wear a two-way mask, which is not only protecting your environment, which is protecting you. They have the name of something with PP2 or what.
Yeah.
You may know better, but that's probably the best protection. And then, of course, what we all know, washing the hands, disinfecting the hands. I think those are the only two practical measures which come to my mind.
Youssef, are you still with us in the line? Do you have a question also related to that?
Absolutely. If you can unmute, yeah, I'm unmuted.
You're good. You're good to go. Perfect.
Hello, Professor. How are you?
I'm fine, Youssef.
Thanks again so much for joining us. So Youssef Kobo from the Brussels Hub. We've met before. It's a pleasure to see you. My main question is, throughout my work, for my work, I have to travel a lot, and I always find myself in a different country every 2 weeks. And what I've been doing in the past couple of years is using my virtual Global Shapers card to reach out to lots of different people in different places. And the one thing that always struck me with this community, the Global Shapers community, and I see 565 of my colleagues are joining me here tonight, is no matter where you go in the world, no matter which culture, religion, socioeconomic background, and so on, whenever you reach out to the Global Shapers community, there will always be a couple of people there to welcome you, to take you out for dinner, to show you around, to introduce you to people, and this is phenomenal. And we've had many different interesting conversations, late night ongoing conversations. The one thing that always stuck out to us, and I'm sure you know, a lot of the Global Shapers have that same profile, young, ambitious people, trying to get ahead in life, trying to make an impact, socially engaged, and so on. And of course, a lot of these members have the same background or experience. Many of us are also fellows and members of other different exclusive communities or convened leadership programs and fellowships and so on and whatnot. But the one thing we always wondered was, the Global Shapers community is a completely different one. It's a very inclusive one. It's a very, people really take care of each other and help each other out and are really impact driven. So there's not even a close second one, a close international community of young driven people who are trying to change the world. Can you, from your experience, share your thoughts with us of where that strong sense of community comes from within the Global Shapers community?
Yes, I have two remarks. I have noticed that with video conferencing, in a, how shall I say, in a fixed framework, you have an agenda and so on, you know who is participating, you can be quite efficient. And you can be quite personal, but it's reset, if I may say so. I sometimes say, when I'm now on this video conferencing or on Zoom, and I see you, Youssef, or I have a better contact with you compared when I was a university professor and someone in the 10th row lifted his arm and had a question. I see you much better. And probably I go away and have a better interaction feeling compared even to a physical setting. But what is missing, and here you are completely right, is what people call serendipity. You know the word I had to learn. Serendipity is that just by chance you meet someone and you discover common interest, and you establish some kind of a bonding. And of course, that's not possible in this, let's say, as we do now, this community, this town hall meeting, for example. But I have an idea, and you could think about it, and I would ask Vadia and Natalie to think about it. Let me tell you a story. Hilde, my wife, is sitting with me here to listen, because she's my young global shaper. I remember when we organized 50 years ago, the first annual meeting in Davos. The question was, how can we bring people together who have similar interests? So we established I don't know, Tinder or other such platforms. We established a list of commonalities, and then we invited those people for dinner and lunch, and it was very successful. And I wonder, since we may be in this traveling or not travel world for quite some time, I wonder, Vadia and Natalie, whether we could think, maybe some of the shapers have an idea, how we could, let's say, around very specific, more personal, not now necessarily environments that we are doing here or COVID, but people with personal interests, how we can create mini platforms to bring them together. Would you think that's an idea we should follow up, or what is your feeling?
I think from the chat, Professor Schwab, we're seeing like great idea and thumbs up. And something we did yesterday, and thanks to Albina and Svenja and the whole team, we had a call yesterday with the curators, over 150 or 200 curators. And one of the things the team designed is to create breakout groups within Zoom. And with those breakout groups, 5 or 6 people are meeting and talking to each other, sometimes by serendipity, and it creates a sense of belonging and a community sense. Yeah. And a lot of people and a lot of shapers came back after saying that it was a great experience, and it kind of remind them of being in the Global Shapers Summit and going for a coffee and meeting someone. Exactly. So definitely there is more to do in that, and we are experiencing, and your idea of doing it by insight is a great one.
What we could do, what we could do is maybe establish a data bank where, in addition to the data we collect anyway, we look for those shapers who are interested. We look at a more personal profile, and then we try to match the personal profiles.
That's a great idea. In addition, also in the last Global Shapers newsletter, we asked hubs if they had ideas of sessions where they can come together. And we received actually more than 50 submissions of sessions where shapers want to come together across a topic and discuss it. And all those for the shapers will be published in the calendar of in TopLink.
And I don't want to give away too much information, and our team is currently thinking through how do we recreate that serendipity, especially in the annual curators meeting, which we will host virtually this year, but as well the Global Shapers Annual Summit. Mm-hmm. And with us moving our meetings virtually, it creates new opportunities where for the first time, we'll get the chance to bring in all 10,000 members into our virtual Global Shapers Annual Summit. And I hear that mandate loud and clear. How do we recreate that serendipity, make intimate moments for people to come together on the topics that they're most passionate about, both to advance projects, but also to have those human connections, which are really at the heart of this community community that the chairman founded for that purpose. So there's lots we can do there, and I am excited to work with Global Shapers, especially for the ACM and the Shapers Summit, to make sure we create those moments. That's a great idea.
Excellent.
Excellent. We have another question, Professor, from Sanju of the Bangkok Hub. He's saying, how can we make sure that the world doesn't forget the failure of our current system? And how many leaders have failed to respond to help the most vulnerable group during this pandemic?
So let me use this opportunity to talk to you about, I think it was Robin. Robin, you used the word reimagination. And I steal your terminology. We call it usually resetting, but reimagination is also, it's a great reimagination. Now let me put it into a context. When we came together in Davos, wait with us please for a moment. Not yet. Hello?
Johnny?
Do not put the list on, please. Yeah. So if I go back to Davos this year, we talked about the need for a more inclusive, a more cohesive, more sustainable world. And I think it was quite clear already in Davos that the system we had in place in some way was broken. And I'm by origin a systems engineer. And of course, for some time, you can maintain a system by doing some patchwork on the surface. But what has happened with the Corona crisis is a clear disruption of our old system. And it provides us with a great opportunity to reimagine or to rethink or to redesign or reset the system. It's not just improving. I think now the time has come to use this opportunity and to move to a different system, a system which is more inclusive, a system which is more sustainable, a system which puts much more value on, let's say, resilience, on human needs, and so on. Now, if I take your question, another part of your question, how much are politicians today, leaders who, to a certain extent, have caused the crisis we are in by neglecting? I mean, I just want to say in brackets, the World Economic Forum 4 years ago, we have made an appeal to the world to look much more at viruses. And we took the initiative and together with the governments of Norway, particularly the UK and Germany, we created an organization which is called CEPI, which is a global organization, Coalition for Epidemic Preparedness Initiatives, that's how it is called. We had about $500 million, 500 million, which collected in this foundation, which is now used to advance the development of vaccines. But the point I'm making is, I think the signs were on the wall. And if we want to reimagine our world, reset our world, we need a new spirit. And I see particularly two elements, two main drivers for such a new world. It's the young people, because it will be your world. And I have written quite a number of times that in the old system, we solved our problems by leaving the bill to be paid to the young generation. Just think of the environment. I'm very happy, Robin, that you reminded us of the importance Think of, let's say, our social systems, which are to a large extent broken or in many countries. So we have to create a new system, and the young generation has to be the driver for it. And second, I come back to the question which was asked related to technologies. We have to make sure that we make the best use of technologies. Technologies can help us to resolve, if applied in a responsible way, they can help us to resolve many challenges we have. Now, that's the reason why the forum, I'm now very much involved in a global mobilization attempt. Maybe a little bit early because people are still too much preoccupied with COVID. But the idea is to mobilize everybody, all institutions, the academic world, and particularly our global shapers, to design this new system which we need.
Thank you, Professor. Another question, this time from Amir Shihada, who you know very well, and he's calling you Uncle Schwab. Can we look at this pandemic as a way the world is trying to tell us that us as humans, we need to slow down as we were moving fast? Do you agree with that statement, Professor?
I wouldn't completely agree. We have, let's not forget, we have quite a number, about half of the population, if I may say, no, is really slowed down because the usual pressures of going to the office and so on may not dictate your way of life. But let's not forget there is the other half of the population. And I'm thinking of doctors, nurses, so people in the postal offices, and so on and so on. If you ask them, did life slow down? They would tell you no, much to the contrary. We never have been working as hard and at our limits very often, like doctors, as we do now. I would formulate, I think the question is valid, but I would formulate it in a different way. Is it an alarm shot of nature to change our life? Because we know that climate change may have the same impact in terms of human life, so even much bigger impact compared to the virus, but we are not doing enough in order to prevent it. So I think it's a last warning to change our usual patterns.
Excellent, Professor. Thank you. Another question from Diksha from the Noida Hub. What are the kind of mindsets shifts do we as leaders need to make to ensure we are better prepared for crisis in the future?
Two very simple answers. So first one is, I think we have to move from a very much a world where materialism, material satisfaction is a priority for many people, but also for political, economic decision-making. Do not forget that we measure progress by GDP, not by well-being. If we had done it, if we had included well-being, we probably would have created a better health system in many countries. So it's moving from a, let's say, materialistic world much more to a human-centered world. And second, I think it's also to move from a short-term perspective to a much more long-term perspective, or coming back also to the global shapers. I think we have to come back to intergenerational responsibility, where we think not only in terms of the biggest satisfaction for our existing generation, but we keep in mind the next generation. And I'm speaking here as a proud grandfather.
Thank you, Professor. Another question from Rafael Gabriel from Argentina. Through our long human history, we have always seen big revolutions develop after big catastrophes. From your experience, Professor, how do you feel or expect, and what are the plans that this revolution will have or play out in our future post-COVID-19 societies?
It all depends on the mindset which will reign in this post-corona era. What the virus have shown, there's a lot of discussion related to globalization and deglobalization. And of course, what may happen is a deglobalization in terms of supply chains. People may look much more for, let's say, a higher resilience by doing certain things themselves. So we will have a certain deglobalization in the material world. There we will have a deglobalization related to, I repeat myself, to supply chains. But what is much more important is that I think this virus shows us how interdependent we are, how interrelated we are. At the beginning, everybody thought it's a China or it's an Asia virus. Then it became a global virus. But the same is true for climate change. The same is true for migration. Those are all global issues and require global cooperation to be resolved. So the question is, we see tendencies for bigger egoism. Now, when you are faced with such a crisis, you think of yourself first and you think not so much of the community. So will this persist in the future, or will it be a wake-up call, and will we recognize that even if the economy to a certain extent may deglobalize, but in terms of approaching our global future, we have to work much more together, and that's where I see the forum as an organization reminding everybody that global challenges need collaborative solutions. And I should say solutions which are based on the stakeholder concept. The stakeholder concept is not just valid for companies by saying corporations should not only serve shareholders, but everybody who is dependent on the company, because it's a community. But also nations are communities. The world is a community, and we are all stakeholders of this global community.
Thank you, Professor. And many questions are asking more about the role of the forum and what the forum is doing to help the different stakeholders in order to solve or come up with a solution for a post-COVID-19, but also for a COVID-19 pandemic.
Yeah, we have started now to create task forces and have a first approach, and we may share it, for example, in the next newsletter also with the Global Shapers. We are just at the beginning because, like everybody, we had to transform ourselves from an organization which was very much based on physical meetings. We had to transform ourselves into a virtual organization. But let me show you when we talk about the reimagination. There are actually 10 major objectives which we have to follow. So if you can just show rapidly the 10 dimension of this reimagination initiative. Can we have it? Yeah. So first, I think we have to recreate after the crisis sustained economic growth, sustained and sustainable economic growth. And that will be quite difficult because we will come out of this crisis with a huge debt burden. And debt, even before the crisis, reached 300% of global GDP. And of course, we add now quite a substantial additional burden to it. So I think I'm fully convinced that we need a new global social contract. Social contract which puts more emphasis on well-being, on health, on education, on gender parity, and so on. So then the next one, of course, is the whole climate change. It's not only climate change, it's also biodiversity. It was mentioned before, it's the health of our oceans. So we really have to make progress in this field. So we have to reshape industries in the new context. Just think of the oil industry, which certainly is now still a major factor of our economy and which has to be replaced by the new energies, clean energies. Then we have strengthening regional development and cooperation. I think the forum has been always involved. We need stronger region. We need not only stronger global cooperation, we need stronger regional cooperation. Just think of Africa or the other big region. Then we have to create a much stronger risk resilience, not only for health issues and the virus, but look at all the waste which we have in the world. Look at the nuclear threat which we still have. Then we have to harness the new technologies. We mentioned it before. We have to strengthen global cooperation. I also mentioned it before. And I think we have to, as I mentioned, we have to move from a material perspective much more to a human-centered, values-based perspective. And here we have to revalue our cultural narrative. And finally, of course, as a kind of principle, stakeholder responsibility is the base that we become aware that we are all part of a community, national, local, global shapers, or whatever it is. And so that at the end, if we enhance the well-being of the community, the well-being of everybody will be enhanced.
Thank you,
so those are the 10 perspectives. We will share them, and any feedback and so on is very welcome. What we will do now, we will start to break it down, and maybe we will create task forces. We will probably have about 50 to 80 task forces related to some issues. And we would like to have in each of those task forces at least one person who represents the global shapers and who afterwards mobilizes across the communities all the ideas and wisdom of the global shapers.
Thank you, Professor. Thank you for always involving the global shapers in all the initiatives of the World Economic Forum. That was truly remarkable. We have few minutes left. And maybe, Professor, if you have, what's your advice to the shapers in the 150 countries where we are planted, and what they can do to help their countries, their communities, their societies in thinking of already a post-COVID-19?
Yeah, I first have a question actually to Robin. My question is, how did you manage to create in Panama so wonderful Alps?
This is actually in Kananaskis in Alberta, Canada. So this is my backyard. Well, literally, kind of. But this is a photo that I took last
You are in
September.
Canada. I was understanding you are in Panama, now in Canada. So now I understand, because I was wondering all the time. So what is my message? Look, maybe I become very personal. You know, I have been born before World War II. I experienced the war, I experienced the after-war time, and I would say in many ways it was similar to what we are experiencing now. It's a kind of war, not against the physical enemy, but against the biological enemy, a virus. And everything is subordinated to, let's say, this fight, and to win short term this fight. But we have to think of the reconstruction time, and we have to create with the young generation, a fabulous spirit, looking forward, not seeing the world in a pessimistic way, because what we see now around ourselves, with, let's say, all the problems, the people who are becoming ill. I think we have to have this reconstruction spirit. And I remember, I mean, growing up in Germany after the World War II, there was a fabulous reconstruction spirit. We can do it. We can rebuild a new world. And just imagine, Germany lost the war, but 16 years later, the GDP per capita in Germany was higher again than the GDP in England at the time. So let's look. Of course, we have to deal with this crisis in a very realistic, concerned, pragmatic way, but we have to look beyond. And here, the young generation has to take the lead. So when I'm now creating this initiative, which, by the way, will create a major mobilization around the world, but I'm taking this initiative only because I know I can rely on the global shapers to be the drivers of the reimagination of our world for the next 50 years.
Thank you, Professor. And on behalf of the shapers, I'm sure I can say that we are taking this commitment very seriously, and we will drive that action throughout the whole world, so that we can think of everyone and we don't leave anyone behind. So thank you, Professor.
I just want to thank you, Adia, and I want to thank Natalie and all the team. I know it's not easy, particularly now. I was so much looking forward to actually, Robin, to be in Canada and to have the site which you have in your picture, and to be in Whistler. We should make all the efforts, and I see 550 shapers are on in the town hall meeting now. So we should make all the efforts to concentrate on a purpose, and even if you cannot meet physically, but the purpose remains, and the purpose is a challenge, and we have to show that we are up to the challenge. So thank you all, and I'm looking forward to participate more regularly at those town hall meetings. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor. Thank you, Professor. Natalie, what are our next steps and where we're taking the Shapers?
Absolutely. The Global Shapers community never quits. So what do we have in store? First and foremost, we peaked at over 570 Shapers today. For those Shapers who are still on the line and who are still taking action at home in their communities, please share your actions with us. You can upload your projects onto TopLink, and this is the place where we're keeping track of all of the ways that we can support you. Second, if you have any questions that were not answered today that you think are important to be raised to the global community, please do post on our activity feed. The Global Shapers team will be monitoring this feed closely and answering all of your precious and important questions. Last but not least, we have many more virtual meetings and community gatherings that will be taking place in between our town hall meetings. On Wednesday, the 29th of April, we'll have a session on addressing the threat of COVID on refugees, where we'll get to hear from representatives from the Kumasi and the Kakuma hub. On Thursday, the 30th of April, we'll also have a community session on adapting education systems in the current context, and this will be led by the Buenos Aires, Rabat, Amman, and Perth hubs. All dial-in details can be found on the community calendar on TopLink, and you can also find other sessions being led by hubs around the world here. Write to us if you have a session that you would like to be posted in the community calendar, and let's continue to forge those spontaneous connections and advance existing work between our members. Last but not least, I mean it this time, don't forget to visit the TopLink library, where you can find the latest information on all of the topics that were discussed here and other valuable resources about this community. That's all for now. That's all that we have. Thank you to the over 570 Shapers who joined today's call. Let's continue to work together and keep on shaping.
And thanks to David, Nikta, Yusuf, and Robin for joining us live here and providing your inputs and your questions. Thanks to all the Shapers. We can't wait to have you in the next town hall, but meanwhile, there are many activities and you can find all of us either by email or via TopLink. So thank you so much for being with us. Hopefully you will have a great weekend, if you still remember what a weekend is and all the days are not mixed, like at least for me, it is the case. Till then, please stay blessed and stay at home and stay safe. Wash your hands and follow the recommendations of your countries. Thank you and see you and stay blessed.